Hello and welcome to What Are You Saying Ways, where we talk about topics in the news and how it affects us all. My name is Mary Ann Ocon, thanking you for joining me today on the show, but I'm not alone. I have in the studio Messi Egbebo.
Hello, Marianne. It's good to see you today.
I think every one of us got the memo because we're all dressed in black. I don't know what the occasion is, but also we're being joined by Neoma Fanga. She's joining us via Zoom. Hi, Neoma. I'm glad you got the
Hello,
memo too.
everyone. They say black is beautiful,
I know,
isn't it?
right? Always has the perfect thing to say. Norma, how was your weekend? I hope you enjoyed yourself this weekend. I'm sure it's becoming, is it spring there or it's about to be fall? I don't know.
Yes, it's spring and we're getting into summer. Today
Summer,
is
sorry.
Victoria Day, and yeah, everyone's home today. It's supposed to be a bank holiday, and we went hiking in the morning, so everybody's completely exhausted and just enjoying the sunshine for a bit,
I
coming
know.
out of winter season. So
I,
yes.
I want I want to make a little fun of you. You know what they say about you guys over there. It's sunny in 5 seconds and then it starts raining again.
Over time, some
I
of us have actually
know.
described the weather as, bipolar weather because
Oh
in two
my
seconds,
goodness. I have never seen a weather more erratic than I have in it's just been wow.
That's
So
England for
every
you,
time you have to go out, you're just carrying a light jacket just in case the
just in
weather
case.
changes its mind.
Ah, well, we're grateful that we have a little bit of rain coming, still a lot of sunshine, but hey, we can't complain. Anyway, here's what we found in today's quote. Freedom of the press, if it means anything at all, it means freedom to criticize and oppose. And this is by George Orwell, the famed writer. Um, the reason why we're talking about freedom of the press, obviously, is because Press Freedom Week was just a few weeks ago. And, as the world all over celebrates press freedom, we need to pause in our tracks and really ask ourselves, is the press really free? Are we free to criticize and also to oppose? Or do we have a different way of, exhibiting our press freedom in this part of the world? I want to start with you, Messi, and then I'll go to Neoma.
well, to be very honest, press freedom is very essential for every democracy. And we have seen that, as much as press freedom is under threat, it's the same thing. You can also say that democracy is under threat because you have democracy having guiding principles or these principles that ought to be protected. I mean, some principles of democracy, you say, people have a right, to vote in an election, fundamental human rights and all of that. And all of this cannot be achieved if you don't have the press,
The fourth estate of the realm.
exactly. And so it is very important. We know that democracy is under threat, just the same way the press is under threat. So whatever democracy is to a nation is the same thing as the media. And to really look at it, we really know that that's not what we're experiencing in the entire globe. And Nigeria is not really literally left out in all of this.
Noma, I don't know if it's safe to say, I mean, just imagine, let's paint a picture without the press, without free press, in what we call a democracy. What would that look like?
Oh, well, I guess it will probably look a little bit um what's the word? It would be like a tyranny, so to speak, right? Because it's about people being stifled, people not having that opportunity to express. And it would not be a situation that will give people the ability to show that they're humans, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has ability to express. Everybody should have a right to be able to express themselves. However, it's also important how we choose to respect ourselves or how we choose to express ourselves respectfully. Because sometimes when you're expressing, you also have to learn to put yourself in the shoes of others. It's very easy for you to be able to say what you want to say because you feel that way and you just want to push it out. But
Yeah.
what of the person on the receiving end? So while there's the freedom of expression and there's the freedom to be able to say what you need to say, or you feel prompted to say, it's also important important to say it respectfully.
Respectfully. Love that. Well, in recent years, Nigeria has faced increasing challenges when it comes to ensuring the rights of journalists to report freely without fear. Now, from harassment to intimidation to outright censorship and imprisonment, the landscape for media censorship, media professionals in Nigeria is fraught with peril. Tonight, we're privileged to have OMOYELE SOWORE, a leading voice in the fight for press freedom, joining us live in the studio as we explore the challenges faced by journalists. When we open our phone lines, we'd love to have you join in the conversation because we want to hear from you. But first, let's take a break. And then when we come back, we'll find out what we found in the news. Welcome back. You're still watching Ways. What are you saying? My name is Mary Anoko. Now, let's tell you what today is. Well, today is World Bee Day. World Bee Day is celebrated on the 20th of May and raises awareness about the vital role of bees in pollination and threats they face, including habitat loss, pesticides, climate change, and diseases. This day promotes conservation efforts like creating bee-friendly habitats, supporting sustainable agriculture, and conducting research. Nigerian bees are known to produce distinctive, high-quality honey, thanks to the diverse flora in our country. Beekeeping in Nigeria also supports rural economies, providing income and employment opportunities for many local communities. I have a very interesting bee story. I'm telling you guys. Norma, I grew up in Calabar and I went to school in Calabar. I went to a Catholic school and schools run by these nuns or reverend fathers always have a huge orchard. So you have all kinds of fruits, you know, planted. Now, one of those days I was flogged for making noise and then I was given a punishment to go to the bush and clear. So I climbed mango tree. I used to be a tomboy in secondary school, so I climbed on the mango tree, and a couple of us were under punishment. So I would pluck and then I would throw it down, you know, and they'll put them in their skirts, you know. And then at some point I was dancing on a branch, you know, just dancing. I didn't know that there were bees on that branch, and we scattered the bees. The bees didn't come to us. They went into the school. So we were here struggling to pack our mangoes, but then we heard noises in school, like, you know, in the classroom areas, we had scattered bees out. The whole school, bees were stinging people. So while we ran out, the bees now came to me. I had a big sting on my lip. I had a swollen lip and I took it home. I don't think till today anybody knows who scattered those bees. But that was my bee story. Mercy.
I can imagine, honestly, it's I feel you, Marianne, because I used to be one of those in school who used to do stuff that nobody ever knew did.
And they'd never believe you did it, yeah?
Yes, they'd never believe that you were one of them. I did visit a bee farm once in England, in Chelmsford, England, and wow, it was me overcoming my fear, one of the fears. So that picture that was put up for World Bee Day just took me right back to being in the farm there with all of these bees flying around and trying to get a buzz to you. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting right. But yes, it was interesting to know how useful they are to the ecosystem. And it's a worthy cause, to be part of. Absolutely.
Yeah, busy bees.
So for me, I don't have a bee experience, but, you know, my only bee experience is that I have to have, you know, I like bee a lot. You know, I like honey a lot. So sometimes I spread honey on my bread. You know,
I do that too.
Very
my
crunchy,
God,
and then you have your toast bread with, you know, so that's my bee experience, right?
Thanks to all the bees and all that they're doing. Bees are, I mean, I love the cross-pollination that happens between bees, flowers. It's just beautiful. Anyway, let's find out what we saw in the news. Norma, we'll start with you. What did you find in the news?
Oh, well, I didn't find something in the news, but like I said, today is Victoria Day here. So everyone is just taking time. It's interesting how once there's a bank holiday, everywhere is just completely silent, and then everyone just is indoors. All the stores are closed. So it's just like that moment that everybody just takes time to just reset. And it's good to know because coming from our culture in Nigeria, even though there's a public holiday, people are still selling. People are still
Hustle continues.
everywhere is buzzing, right? But here is just very quiet. Those that are probably going fishing or whatever, hiking, just spending time with family, they actually take this thing seriously. So it's a good learning experience.
Absolutely. Mercy, what did you find in the news?
Oh, well, I found a story that's very interesting. It's something that has happened of recent times, and there seemed to be a development. So usually there's this, parable of saying that every disappointment is a blessing. So I think that it might just be a blessing to the owners of this, business. So Nigeria's Landmark Africa is working on plans to expand into Gambia. If you already know, I have my experience with, Landmark. I mean, I remember the memories. I still have videos of Landmark. But then, Lagos, after losing its Lagos beachside real estate to the government, and its plan for a coastal highway, Nigeria's Landmark Africa is working on plans to build 2 new West African beach properties. Now, guess what? The stakeholders of Landmark Africa hinted that the company had received some separate invitation, including one from the Gambian government and from 3 state governments in Nigeria's southeast. You know what I mean? To develop waterfront leisure hubs aimed at boosting tourism in those places. And those 2 commissioned projects include the development proposed in Akwa Ibom State, an oil-producing Nigerian state by the edge of, of course, it would be Eket, Atlantic Ocean. You also find it's also expected that it will open before the end of the year, while the Gambian project might take a little longer. And so it is so unfortunate that...
It's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, a blessing in disguise. That's why I said, one disappointment, they say, it's a blessing to another. The fact that the ease at which the government actually embarked on, the demolition of this particular property for the reason of the coastal highway, and for a government that is big at all levels, whether the state government are different, across the entire country. We hear our government say we're very big on foreign investment. And, tourism has a serious potential for Africa.
Yeah.
There's been statistics from the World Bank about, over 2000s, how, tourism has contributed to the GDP of Africa and even Nigeria. And there's also postulations by experts saying that countries that are very close to coastal lines should be positioned to take advantage of the economic benefits. Now, to see that as a country, we're struggling with revenue, as a state, I mean, things are going on, and we're talking about being very, vested in foreign investment. It was so rash to do. I would think that, there would have been another way, there would have been something else. But look at that, Gambia is already, trying to grab all of these opportunities, and and other states,
of course,
in Nigeria. Well, we say it's unfortunate that has happened to Lagos, because I really know what Landmark means to Lagos. A big city in Nigeria, and what happens, the experience a lot of people have every other time you come. It's quite unfortunate. Not to talk about the implication it holds for the real estate sector in Nigeria and in Lagos.
Nama.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with Mercy anymore. I mean, being able to do this or see the opportunities in seeming setback is very key. And in this situation, I mean, it's a beautiful turn of events, so to speak. And probably looking forward to that expansion. And it's all the better for Gambia, isn't it?
It is, and other states in Nigeria, if you ask me.
It is.
Well, yes, absolutely.
I mean, for someone for me who likes to travel, I like to go to very exotic countries. Gambia is still on my list of countries to visit. And if there's anything that's more beautiful about Gambia, it's the waterfront. It's amazing. And I just want to backtrack about businesses running away from Nigeria. It's been happening. I remember when I was in Port Harcourt, when Michelin decided that they were going to up and leave the country because, you know, business was no longer working. And we've had several other businesses leave. I'm hearing that Microsoft is leaving. Who knows if Google is going to follow, if Oracle is going to go. These are things that we need to consider as a government. When our governments are implementing policies, they're saying, they keep shouting about this whole ease of doing business. But then, of course, it's not just about the ease of doing business. There are lots of things. It's a potpourri of issues that need to be addressed if we must keep those businesses here. But hey, I mean, Landmark has lost a lot of money because of this coastal highway, but I'm sure that there are pegs to going to Gambia. The Gambia is a very great, you know, tourism destination. So yeah. Round of applause for them. Yeah, so it's a blessing in disguise. Well, here's what I found in the news. For some people, it might be good news. For some people, it will be like, yeah, whatever. Apparently, Dangote petrol supply, we hear that federal government may slash 6 trillion naira from fuel import. I'll tell you why. Because the federal government says they may cut its approximately 6.2 trillion naira yearly fuel importation bill if the Dangote Petroleum Refinery begins the sale of petrol, as promised by the chairman of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote. Dangote, while speaking at the Africa CEO Forum Annual Summit in Kigali, Rwanda, on Friday, assured Nigerians that following the laid-down plans of the Dangote Refinery, Nigeria would no longer need to import petrol starting from next month. But then I remember that following this whole refinery story, at some point we heard that Dangote had to import fuel himself into the country for him to refine because the NNPCL had somewhat used our fuel to get some sort of loans. And so there was not enough to give to Dangote. But I'm even wondering if Dangote has to import fuel back into the country, how does that reduce our problems? It's a very confusing, you know, situation, if you ask me. Mercy.
Well, I've always thought that, first of all, for those who say there might be benefits, first of all, if you have the Dangote refinery functioning in Nigeria, we know that it would create employment opportunities to the locals and what have you and all of that. But, you know, to think that we probably might have petrol at an affordable price, less than what we're buying, is actually, you know, delusional. Yes, it is delusional, you know, because Dangote is in business. He is in business to make profit.
He's not the NNPCL.
He is not a charity organization. And I tell you, you remember what happened with the telecommunication, where you had monopoly of, you know, certain, I don't want to begin to mention the brands, until we begin to, at the time, we remember once upon a time in Nigeria, we bought a SIM for 100 and something thousand. You know, we bought SIM for how much again? You know how?
I got my SIM at 35,000 back in the day. Yeah.
Until you started having other communication, you know, telecommunication.
So if there are more players, it makes you know, the business.
So yes, it's a good thing that he's coming on board. But to say that we're going to have petrol, you know, at a less price than we're, right now is not going to be the issue. And then secondly, do we have enough petrol that he's going to buy or he's going to get from Nigeria to refine? Or is he going to be importing, you know, into the country? So these are some of the questions that we need to answer. So I think that we're just heading, you know, we're just heading to that point where we literally would be buying petrol higher than what we are buying right now.
Well, because of time, we have to go quickly for a break. When we return, we will be talking with our guest. OMOYELE SOWORE is here with us in the studio, and we'll be talking press freedom and, of course, the final release of Mr. Ojukwu. Stay with us.
Efficiency in terms of electricity distribution. People should be able to see this power being generated. You know, when you see that power is generated, you wouldn't really complain in payments. However, the hike in price was quite sudden. Yeah, the next clarifications that it only affects about 1.9 million Nigerians, that about 10 million more are still under subsidy. And it begs the question, are they not Nigerians? The so-called 1.9, are they not entitled to some form of subsidy? You know, this should happen in phases, not outright like 200% increase. That is so, will I say, uncalled for. And looking at the fact that subsidy has been removed on petroleum products like a year ago, bringing about this one now makes it difficult for everybody at the same time.
What has happened to the band A customers is that the tariff has been adjusted to reflect the cost of the service. So let's even price the commodity properly. I mean, there is a conversation around whether electricity is basic amenity or utility, or whether it's a commodity. In the days when we were swimming in petrodollar, 70s, 80s, and things like that, you could think along that line, but not today again. Electricity is a commodity. It has to be sold. So when we get more money from it, we can then develop the power sector to the point where customers will be the ones to say, no, this is the hours of electricity that I want, because that's what I can afford. So if it is nighttime alone, you can enjoy the electricity, all well and good. I mean, most of us travel out of this country, and we know that people don't play with their utilities. They pay for it. In Nigeria, we play with our utilities. We not only play with our utilities, we even vandalize. And we want a stable power sector. Where is that done?
The fact is, truly, we've never had stable power. It's just like talking about financial literacy. I don't have money, so I should learn about money.
Exactly.
In the same vein, I don't have lights, and you're talking about me effectively managing lights. When I have power, I'm excited.
Exactly.
Put everything on.
Right.
We all turn to ice block. Let there be light. Right? So sometimes it feels like there is a tunnel vision around the challenges and the realities. Then you just pick one minute part of it and you hold on to it. It doesn't say that the thing you said is not valid, but there's context, right? So the challenges that we're facing today, we've kicked the can down the road for so long. Everything has now come to roost all at the same time. Plus subsidy on power, plus electricity, plus exchange rate. So the Nigerian consumer, let me not say the poor Nigerian consumer, the Nigerian consumer right now, we need to breathe.
First of all, your lack of sleep is affecting your appetite, okay? Because you not getting enough sleep is actually affecting your hormones, the hormones that, that regulate your appetite, your hunger and satiety. Do you understand? So your lack of sleep is already causing havoc. More irritable, you're snappy. It's affecting relationships. It's affecting so many things. So our lifestyle is actually not helping us. And so but what we do, we have to be intentional.
Welcome back to Ways. I am Mary Ann Okon. I still have with me Mercy Bokwo, and of course I have with me Neoma Efanga also joining us via Zoom. But tonight on the show, we welcome OMOYELE SOWORE, who is a prominent Nigerian activist, a journalist, and a founder of Sahara Reporters. SOWORE has been a vocal advocate of press freedom and has faced significant challenges in his pursuit to expose corruption and promote transparency in Nigeria. Recently, he played a pivotal role, I beg your pardon, in aiding the release of a fellow journalist, Ojukwu, who was unjustly detained. Tonight, we will delve into the state of press freedom in Nigeria, the challenge that journalists face, as well as SOWORE's personal experiences and insights on the subject. Please let's hear what you have to say, because this conversation is between you and us. Remember, you can join the conversation and send us an SMS or a WhatsApp message on 081 803 84663. That's 081 803 84663. Well, Mr. SOWORE, it's so good to have you join us in the studio. Welcome. A lot of people would call you a a stubborn person. Some people would say that you are very heady. Some others would call you a freedom fighter. So many people call you an activist. Some call you a journalist. But I know that you said you're not a journalist. You told me one time that you're a busybody. Yes. But let's start by addressing the issue of press freedom in Nigeria. And this is not particularly about any government. We're talking about Nigeria as a country. How free is the press? I mean, I know that I've been to places and every time I talk, they say, have you been to prison before? And I say, why? Because you're in Nigeria. I'm like, no, I've never been to prison. Why do you think there's that perception of Nigerian journalists outside of the country?
I think it was Idi Amin Dada of Uganda who once said about freedom in general, that he can permit freedom of speech, but he cannot guarantee freedom after speech. I think that's why most Nigerians just wonder if you're a journalist, if you do hard-hitting stories, you're allowed to publish, but you're also likely to perish. So that is why people ask that question, considering the peculiarities of the changing style of repression and oppression of journalists, and the fact that leaders or rulers keep trying to make laws to suppress journalists and people who generally use medium that's available, the media in general. Because I want to make it clear that, see, the landscape of journalism has changed. It's no longer your shirt-rolling editor in any newsroom. We now have a huge platform, several of them, for people to freely express themselves. So everybody practically now owns a newspaper. And where's your newspaper? Your Facebook page, your Twitter page. So you write editorials. I don't know, sometimes it doesn't matter how long it is, and other people contribute to this. So you make commentaries, you write letters to people, and everything that a journalist does in a newsroom in those days is done by individuals in their living rooms, in a bathroom, anywhere people find themselves on the right stories. The reason why I don't address myself as a journalist because I never went to journalism school, and I don't want to burden myself with, what a journalist should be and how they should dress or conduct themselves. But what drove me into journalism was the fact that I wanted to create a genre of journalism that is capable of getting people angry enough to act, to stop corruption in particular. And then it expanded beyond that, and it became news platform. And I really, really admire something about internet journalism when I started it, and that is feedback and engagement.
Immediate.
That is immediate. And you can create a news story, and people can fact-check you immediately, instantaneously. And they can give their own opinion, and even add sometimes to the story in ways you don't know.
Yeah.
And then we used to have a backhand where we approved comments and all that. And we also used to get anonymous emails and all. So I went through all of that. It was exciting to me. And so I cannot live in a society where there's a government and there are no journalists. I prefer a society where there are journalists and no government. Yes.
But I mean, there can't be one without the other. So I'm guessing that,
I think, if you talk about Nigeria, we practically don't have government, so we need more journalism.
We do have a government.
No, we do have a government.
Is that so?
So I mean, usually it's like saying because there are no absolutes, they're just relative. So literally, we have a government, but we probably might not have a government that is working.
That's
so
no
that's what
half
it is.
government.
That's what it is. We do have a government that
is
is
the government
not
that they taught us in secondary school,
but doesn't also take out the fact that we don't have a
elementary government says this is government. These are the arms of government. These are the functions of government. If all those things are missing, then we don't have a government. No, so that's a conversation for another symposium discussion in the future.
I know.
All right. So, but I do have an area of interest. Would you say that the issue is that, journalists or the practice of journalism in Nigeria is not in accordance with the laws, the rules? We've recently seen the issue of defamation, criminal defamations that some of these journalists have actually faced. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think from the time immemorial, government has always been at loggerheads with journalists. Yes. Even in the Christian Bible, at the point Jesus had a problem with the scribe and the Pharisees and the busybodies, as I like to call them. asking me questions, and Jesus is supposed to be this very nice, meek guy, but at a point, I was like pissed off with them because they get in the way of what could be smooth operation of people in government. People in government don't like to be disturbed. It doesn't matter whether it's in Nigeria or in the U.S. Today, Julian Assange, who many people also said is not a journalist, won his appeal in the UK not to be repatriated back to the U.S. But the guy did the biggest journalism of all times. He exposed the biggest secrets of the U.S., those cables that he exposed through WikiLeaks. And that helped the world, And contrary to what most people were saying, or the U.S. government was saying that it's going to lead to some of their informants to be killed. Nobody was killed. But it helped the world to understand how the world was working by exposing caches of documents. And I did that a lot, In my heady days of journalism, I would obtain people's credit card information, hotel bills, and all that, just so that people can see how their monies are being spent. They follow the money. I once walked into a Citibank branch north of New York City, and I walked confidently to meet the bank manager, and I said, there is money laundering going on in your bank. And he said, how did you know? I said, well, there's a government, and I gave him his name. And he pulled out the document and said, don't let anybody know I told you, but please, we are not doing money laundering. That was 5 years. He transferred some money through
Citibank
in New York. And it worked. So, but that was how we started exposing how Nigerian government officials were buying properties abroad, whereas they can't build schools here. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, for the want of time, I am asking that. Do you think that it's because of the abuse that
No, you are referring to what they're doing to journalists. No, that's why that pivoted away by saying that government has never been comfortable with, but particularly in Nigeria, government has always wanted to, control the media. That's why there's still an NTA that is still playing you the 1979 intro. That's why there's still a Radio Nigeria that nobody listens to, but there's a huge budget for it.
How can you say that? There are people who listen to FRCN.
Well, I haven't
still
listened
people
to
who
it.
they're sentimental about it.
It's the same thing I say of newspapers. I was one of the first people to predict that newspapers are going to end up in the museum. And it's headed there now because even the editors of print newspapers don't wait for the news the next day. So I still don't get it why they are publishing, but I understand that a lot of obituaries that needs to be published in a poor country.
Wow. Well, today you're not smiling. Norma, I know you have a question. Norma, I think that you're muted, so we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. All right. I said Mr. Shure is out for us today. Okay. So while you were talking, I hear you, from what I hear you say, I hear authenticity to journalism. But I want to draw attention to the fact that, I wanted to ask what your thoughts were with regards to the way journalism takes place into today's climes, where we have a lot of, like you said, now it's going to be on newspapers, it's going to be on the TV houses and all, to people's hands and all. So everyone is a reporter now. But the authenticity of information that goes out, more often than not, people do not take time to process the information. Everyone is more quick to push out information and then this goes viral and begins to move on before people realize that it's fake news. So more often than not, we have situation of fake news being projected, and even journalists do not take the time to do their research, to do their own due diligence before this. So in your words, what would you say? How has the transition been from when you began as, you started your journey in the world of journalism to what it is today?
So Let me tell you this, that what I know about fake news as a phenomenon is very political. It was government's own way of saying, look, we haven't been able to figure out how to wrestle down the news media. Well, let's throw something at them that will be scary. Let's blackmail them into, listening more to us. That's where, in my view, fake news came from as a phenomenon. But I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. But, newspapers have always made provision for, you know, uh, errors. That's why you have a whole section of the newspaper, New York Times, devoted to errors of yesterday. These days, you can correct the errors even faster, instantaneously, as soon as you find out.
Yeah.
And because news reporting now has more democracy in it, there's a lot of participation. Somebody can say, this is fake news. Before you know it, they will fact check you while you're alive, and they'll find out that, you're putting out fake news. But what I tell people is that what is the biggest fake news you can get today in Nigeria? Is somebody who reads on NTA that the Nigerian economy is doing well. That's fake news. Why is the government not upset with that? Like, somebody will say fake news is like, oh, Nigerians are doing well. We are paying them very well. Petrol will be coming when there's scarcity. That's fake news, because the person who said petrol is coming knew that petrol is not coming. Just like you were reviewing earlier that Dangote said there will no longer be need to import petrol. That's fake news, because Dangote himself is importing crude. And I don't know where he came about his own distillation process, that it only distills diesel. What they taught us about distillation is that at different degrees of temperature, there will be petrol, water, vapor, and all that. So there's something fake about the whole process. So, and the journalists that are the ones telling the stories are now the ones who are held account. That's why I say it's political. The guy who exposed Fisayo, FIJ, who exposed custom people, who found their hotels and all that, is the one who has to go to jail. And the custom people are the ones who can go to the police and report him. Is Fisayo's story fake? No. Is Daniel Ojuku's story fake? No. Today, I went to the Federal High Court in Lagos to witness the trial of a blogger, one guy called JLA Speak. When they were reading the charges, it was ridiculous. If I was a judge, I would just be like, please get out of my courtroom. It was 3 charges read to him, and he said, this guy has lowered the reputation of Pastor Ebuka Obi by claiming that he's doing fake miracles. Those are the charges. And the judge is like, oh, these are weighty allegations. He sent him to Ikoyi prison until next week. The guy has been in prison for 60...
Sorry, is the burden of proof not supposed to be on the pastor?
Exactly. So, and in my view...
You know what? I'm so sorry. Let's go on a quick break. When we come back, it's getting juicy. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back. It still weighs.
Nigerian foods. I know that a lot of people say, oh, with Nigerian foods, you can still... But I find that a lot of Nigerian foods are very heavy on carbs. And it might not necessarily aid your weight loss journey, number one. So I'm trying to look at the flip side of, okay, if you really, really want to say, okay, you know what, I want to be quite intentional about my food. I want to eat right. I want to have XYZ protein, and you may end up spending way, more than, you budget, or more than you can even afford. That's on one hand. Then on the second hand, you talk of snacking, healthy snacking, really snacking. I don't know the snack. Is it gala? Or is it munchies? Mini?
Your problem
what? No. I'm just saying generally. I mean, because even I'm trying to look at the cost effectiveness of it. You want to snack on apple. Apple is like 500 naira, or how much now? No, really. I mean, because this is something that touches everyone.
still watching Ways, don't forget you can be part of the conversation by sending us a WhatsApp message or a text message. Or better still, if you're watching us live on YouTube, post your comments on our live stream. We'd like to read and hear from you. We still have OMOYELE with us in the studio, and we're still talking about press freedom. Now, you were telling us about an interesting situation in the court.
So they read all these charges, and they pretty much saying that this guy on Facebook, on his Facebook handle, alleged that the pastor's miracles were fake. I don't understand why we should end up in court over that in the first place. If the miracles are not fake, show it to us. You understand? Because all these big churches have their own TV stations. Let's follow the person you did miracle with, you understand? It's just like a pastor of Dunamis who said he has a bag of rice that doesn't finish. I don't have a problem with it, but I would like to have a bag too, the Dunamis rice that doesn't finish. Solves the hunger problem in the country. But if I say that the rice doesn't exist and you take me to court, it's ridiculous. Are you getting my point? And this is part of where it gets very tricky. Journalism of credibility. Government, that's why I say that fake news is very political to me. That you just slap, the moment you just slap fake news on anything now, people don't even ask because, and government is very happy about that. The army does that regularly to Sahara reporters or other platforms. Anything you report, you just put fake news. You know, they have a stamp for it in their office. And then when it becomes true, you don't get it, we don't get them saying it's
There's
true
no
news.
rebuttal, there's no apology.
What I'm saying is that the way news works now, and this is why it's important to innovate, is such that there's a lot of participants. You can't even get away with fake news. And anybody who is serious on these platforms understand that if you want to remain relevant and with integrity and credible, you have to keep checking, you know. And when there's, you know, a substance that looks fake or erroneous, you can always correct. A newspaper have to wait the next day before they do their print. So they know what they are doing when they're saying, you know, fake news, fake news, fake news. It is government that is the biggest purveyor of fake news. Fake news came from propaganda. Government owns and controls propaganda. Politicians use propaganda all the time. There's nobody who gives you fake news more than politicians because they are going to promise you that they'll provide schools, they'll provide food, they'll tell you that they'll provide peanut butter on top of, you know, but it was never going to happen. They'll come back 8 years later or 4 years later and they would still keep promising the same way. I am not saying that we should not take care of these things, but fake news is not as dangerous as they make it sound. What I'm saying is that fake governments, fake miracles are more dangerous than fake news.
Let me quickly ask this question about protection of the journalists because, you know, we keep talking about government and the laws that they make, you know, whether it be the Cybercrime Act, whether it be the ones that we've shut down, the social media that we've shut down over and over again. How do we protect the journalist in Nigeria? Because, like I mean, look at what we're seeing in courts. The fact that the judicial system is no longer the last hope of the common person. It looks like we're, I don't know, in between a rock and a hard place. How do we protect ourselves?
I don't, you know, I mean, journalists are so important that they protect everybody. Interestingly, they are the most unarmed protectors of society because journalists have taken down governments. They've told stories that expose the biggest lies. So sometimes I just think that journalism is so divine that you shouldn't even be asking for protection for them. I'm surprised that journalists are even as safe as they are anywhere in the world, considering the, you know, the enormity of the work they have to do. But I think the society should protect journalists by getting more involved in ensuring that when a journalist is being harassed, everybody's talking about it. It happened with Ojukwu's case. They would have loved to keep him for as long as they wanted, but you know, very quickly, everybody was getting involved. You know, people were preaching about it in churches. They're like, they are holding one journalist. And before you knew it, the IG of police had to do something about it, even though they did it, you know, by first 7 measures. They said, oh, yeah, you still came with, that's fine, but he's gone, you know. And then later they said, oh, you still have charges, oh. Just to remind anyone else that might be in his shoes that we can come after anybody. So I think also it's important that journalists, unions also do their work. In Nigeria, I don't like to talk about unions because unions have become part and parcel of the problem. If the the labor unions tell you they are going to do something now about anything, just know that is fake news right there. But the NUJ should be at the forefront of protecting journalists. But I also understand that journalism is way bigger than what the NUJ even envisaged. That's why I keep saying, there's a friend of mine, Sonala Luma, said journalism is so important that it has to include non-journalists to make it work.
Well, so quick one before, we get to Norman over there. Do you think that because all over the world, I mean, journalists engage, in practices that hold government accountable, those in power, do you think that in Nigeria that the environment is enabling enough for, journalists to actually hold government accountable?
It's never going to happen. And we must accept that as long as you're in the...
How do you mean?
No, journalists are in the business of offending powerful people. So and as long as you offend powerful people, they are not going to create an enabling environment for you to come after them and take them down at will. So it's going to be a tug of war. I mentioned it on your show that most people say that prostitution is the oldest profession. I disagree. I think journalism is the oldest profession because it was journalists that found prostitutes and reported about them before we knew about them in the first place. So it is just to understand that it is almost like a divine intervention in society for people who are doing journalism. But I also want to clarify that journalism is not about holding government accountable alone. There are entertainment journalists, there are music journalists, there are all kinds of genres of journalism.
So accountability at all levels.
Exactly. There are journalism for kids, for adults, there's health journalists, there's journalists for fertility. Where my street in New York City, where I had Sahara Reporters located, every building had one journalism concern. It's either real estate journalism or journalism of flowers. They just write about flowers a lot. They have journalism of shoes, journalism of fashion. I mean, if you travel abroad, you get to airports, you see all kinds of newspapers. All of them are on websites now. So journalism is not limited to just holding government accountable.
Yeah.
But
that's just one.
When we talk about safety, it is within the practice of holding the practices of engaging.
Well, I mean,
if you exist in a society that
a Dior company can take you to court.
Even journalism of fashion can get you into trouble.
Yes, Dior can take you to court.
Write about the wife of a governor not dressing properly.
but there's some
I'll just write
political element to that. That's what I'm saying.
Well, don't you know about what they call fashion police? Can't you just say, wow, this governor's wife
I think any form of journalism can get you into trouble.
Exactly. So
especially
that's what I'm saying. Nobody's going to create an enabler environment except if they can create their own journalism, in which they're just kissing up to them all the time. You're the best, It's like the NTAs of this world, the FRCN of this world.
You are not going to be dragging
And it's not only that. It's just like in the U.S. The U.S. has a propaganda arm called VOA, Voice of America. It is not broadcast in the U.S. It's meant for people, it's like some kind of cultural, system or strategy to get the world to believe that America is always right. Yes.
Nama, you're a journalist in diaspora. Please come in here.
All right. So, Mr. Shore, I wanted to ask what the journalists themselves, right? You said a lot about government and what other people are not doing. So I want to know what the journalists themselves could do to help to keep themselves safe while reporting, because while they are doing some good to the community, to society, it's also important that they do it within the confines of the law, as well as keeping themselves safe. So what are, especially for young upcoming journalists, I mean, they may start off as street journalism and stuff, but actually now grow to want to be journalists. What are things that they need to pay attention to be able to do this in the proper way and to also keep safe?
I can advise on one thing that I think is very common here. Journalists want to offend and socialize. That's dangerous. What I mean is that you cannot be a journalism, you can't be practicing a journalism that is critical of government. And when they call parties at the government house, you are there. You know, when they are doing naming ceremony, you are their MC. You know, all this kind of journalism. When you are doing journalism, please define your boundaries and don't socialize beyond those boundaries. And you can also go underground when you sense that things are dangerous, you know. And that's what I did for years. Most people didn't know I was publishing Sahara Reporters until I came out. Because you could also do that. You can anonymously publish.
Yes.
But what anybody should understand with regards to any form of journalism or media practice is that there's nothing anonymous if it's online. There's always some kind of footprint out there that will make them track you down, and they'll find you anywhere you are. So don't ever think that you can. But, you know, there are several ways, you know, and also it's not wrong for non-journalists who cannot participate in the existing conventional unions to also organize around their own personal interests.
Yeah.
Even if they're not registered, so that if something goes wrong with one of them, all of them are crying out
They
at the
can
same time.
rally
Because
around.
that's what I find to be a little disturbing when we went to the police headquarters. They're like, oh, the journalists came as if they are strangers interviewing me. I said, it's your job that's at risk. The following week, the police invited another set of journalists to come and explain what they wrote about the chairman of the Police Service Commission. It's going to keep going like that, you know.
Wow.
It's a revolving door until you start going to the police station to go and get confirmation, to go and get permission to write.
No way.
Yeah.
Someone is asking a question on our YouTube live feed here. It says, can you ask Mr. OMOYELE SOWORE how some sections of the cybercrime law in Nigeria is related to sedition law under the military?
Well, you know, the sedition law wasn't actually under the military. It was a colonial law. And pretty much that's what the cybercrime section 24 is all about, that you can somehow annoy a powerful person. So in those days, it used to be the district officers and governors. The colonialists used sedition to protect themselves from critics. And that's what this thing is. But what is interesting is that the Cybercrime Act of 2015, Cybercrimes Act of 2015, has actually been amended as of February this year. But as I told you on your show the last time, the police said they're not aware of the changes that has been made. When Femi Falana appeared in court for a jail, they told the judge, and the judge, I'm sure, was surprised, like, there are no charges here because this has been amended. But as long as you haven't got into the substance of the case itself, you cannot make that, you know, presentation, or you can't move such emotion before a judge to say, look, this is trash. You know, there are no charges here. And it's true. Because there are 3 charges. 2 of them were put under the Cybercrime Act. And I think the police did it tactically to just keep him detained. And the other one was put under the Criminal Code, which criminalizes defamation. But the problem with that is that it is not a federal jurisdiction offense. You have to go to a state court. But they know what they are doing. They know that before we get to the point, he would have slept.
So they're just giving it the run
He has
around,
gone to the Koyi
obviously.
prison now, so he'll probably find one of their victims there, Bobrisky.
I want to quickly ask about. I want to quickly ask about our employers, and I think I've asked you that question before. Many of our employers don't allow for us to join some of these unions that you're talking about, even though you berated us already. Many would have said that the umbrella of these unions would help us at least, not just agitate on issues like this, but also protect our rights, whether it be our payment, our treatment in the places of work.
Safety concerns.
Yes, safety concerns. I mean, you're going to look into the camera, obviously, because you're also an employer. What should they be prioritizing in terms of the people who put their life on the line every day to do this job?
You know, I'm technically not an employer at this point because I'm not.
Because you left, but yeah. You know what I mean.
What I've always prioritized when I was there is to make sure that people are paid well enough. And, you know, we suffered where we tried to enter into Nigeria. Our money was seized by Saraki when he was Senate president and all of that. It's part of all the strategies they use to bankrupt you. but to also ensure that journalists have healthcare, you know, policies, you know, because one thing that people don't talk about in Nigeria is mental health care. And it's journalists who is constantly being harassed will be depressed, will be fearful. Some of them will have panic attacks. You know. Some of them would never even recover from one incident of harassment. So it's also important that if we can find in Nigeria, which is hard to find, that you don't just talk about medical care alone, that you have a mental health care component to it, so that you can keep strengthening them to believe in what they're doing. I see when journalists get detained, and I've met some of them in detention and how they're so harassed that some of them don't even want to go back to work. There was a guy who was kidnapped by soldiers. You guys heard about it, and he had to resign because his employer went and said, "We're sorry," even though the guy was right. So the employers themselves are also part of the problem, because the people who are now running journalism concerns in Nigeria are the same people journalists are supposed to be after.
That's a conversation for another day. But because of time, we have to go. I want to say thank you, OMOYELE SOWORE, former presidential candidate of the AAC.
I thought you were not going to say that.
We'll have to say it. We'll have to say it.
Yes.
And, of course, publisher, Sahara reporters, human rights activists. Thank you so much for being here on the show. We're hoping that you can come back soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming around.
Have a good evening, everybody.
All right. Well, we want to remind you, in case you forgot, what our quote for today is: freedom of the press. If it means anything at all, it means freedom to criticize and oppose. And this is by famous writer George Orwell. I want to say thank you to my co-anchors, Neoma Efanga, who is our journalist in diaspora. Thank you, Neoma, for joining us. I also want to say thank you to Mercy Ebekbo for joining me in the studio. Thank you, Mercy.
Okay.
Time always runs fast when you're having great conversations, unfortunately. My name is Mary Ann Okon. Enjoy the rest of our programs, and don't forget to join us tomorrow on Ways.
Okay, is that...
So we'll all
Yes.
be in the camera. So we're going to face the different cameras, and then she'll be part of it.
Yes.
You are blocking my camera.
You take now. Have you taken your shot?